Picture this, a world-famous rapper at the peak of his career. A man who's sold out arenas, broken streaming records, and shaped an entire generation of hip-hop. You'd think life at the top means endless celebration, luxury, and peace. But what if I told you that behind the shine, behind the #1 hits, and the billion-dollar empire, lies a story much colder? What if the man everyone sees as untouchable has been quietly fighting battles the world never even knew about? That's exactly where Drake's ICEMAN comes in. From the very first note, it doesn't feel like just another album. It feels like a confession. The beats are darker, the tone heavier, the energy colder. You can almost feel the chill in his voice, as if he's speaking from a place where the lights don't shine, where the money doesn't matter, and where trust is a currency no one can afford. And here's the thing, fans weren't ready for it. Some expected bangers, some expected love songs. But what they got instead was a journey into Drake's mind, a place filled with paranoia, betrayal, loneliness, and the cold reality of what it truly means to be #1 for so long. ICEMAN isn't about flexing, it's about survival. It's about freezing your emotions just to keep moving forward. Every line feels like a double meaning. Every bar is a chess move, whether he's addressing rivals, critics, or even himself. There's no denying that this project is layered with hidden messages and truths that only reveal themselves the deeper you dig. So the question is, what is Drake really trying to tell us? What secrets are buried beneath the ice? And why does this project feel less like music and more like a warning? Stay locked in, because once we start breaking this down, you'll see just how wild it really will get. They say heavy is the head that wears the crown. And when it comes to Drake, that crown has never left his head. For over a decade, he's been the face of modern hip-hop, shifting sounds, breaking records, and influencing the culture in ways that only a handful of artists in history ever have. But even kings have to adapt. Even kings have moments when the weight becomes too much. That's where ICEMAN begins, not as a celebration of victory, but as a cold, calculated reflection of what it costs to stay on top. The first time people heard ICEMAN, they knew something was different. There were no over-the-top features, no radio-chasing hooks, no glossy beats designed for TikTok. Instead, it felt like Drake had closed the door, shut out the noise, and sat alone in a room with nothing but his thoughts and a mic. The production was stripped back. The energy was colder. It didn't sound like he was trying to impress anyone. It sounded like he was trying to survive. Before this project, Drake had been through a whirlwind. From the chaos around her loss to constant online debates about his legacy to new waves of artists taking shots at him in interviews and in music. There was a sense that the world wanted to see if Drake could still dominate. And instead of responding with another flashy project, he gave us something unexpected, something raw, emotional, and brutally honest. The name itself, ICEMAN, says everything. On the surface, it's a flex. Ice in hip-hop has always been a symbol of success: diamonds, watches, chains, the kind of jewelry that says, "I made it." But there's a deeper meaning. Ice is also about emotional detachment. It's about freezing your feelings so no one can hurt you. It's about becoming cold to survive. And that's exactly what Drake is doing here. You can feel it in the lyrics. You can hear it in the delivery. This isn't the playful, charming Drake that gave us catchy summer anthems. This is a version of him that's been through betrayal, loss, and loneliness, and decided to build walls instead of bridges. Fans didn't all understand it at first. Some were confused. They were waiting for the big hooks, the quotable lines, the upbeat energy. But others felt the shift immediately. They could tell this project wasn't about popularity, it was about truth. It was about finally letting people see the weight he's been carrying for years. What makes ICEMAN so powerful is how layered it is. On the surface, it's still Drake's clever bars, confident delivery, high-level production. But underneath, it's something darker. It's a diary, a confession, a warning. Every track feels like a message to someone, whether it's an old friend, a rival, or maybe even to himself. And that's where the project becomes fascinating. Drake has always been known for his emotional transparency, but this time it's different. He's not asking for sympathy. He's not playing the victim. He's showing what it looks like when someone who's been at the top for so long starts to realize that success doesn't come with peace. It comes with pressure. There's a reason it feels cold when you listen to it. That's not an accident. The entire project is built around that mood. From the echoing drums to the minimalist synths, everything is designed to make you feel like you're standing on thin ice. Like one wrong move could send everything crashing down. And that's exactly how Drake feels. He's not just rapping for fun anymore. He's documenting a state of mind. He's showing us what happens when the lights turn off, when the crowd leaves, and when you're left alone with your thoughts. It's not glamorous. It's not joyful. Survival. And maybe that's what makes ICEMAN so different from everything else in his discography. It's not about proving he's the best. It's about proving he's still standing, still here, still cold enough to handle the fire that comes with the throne. They say success is the loudest silence. You can win every award. You can top every chart, and still, people will ask, but can he do it again? That's the curse of being Drake. Every release comes with a microscope. Every verse gets dissected. Every feature becomes a headline. And when ICEMAN dropped, it wasn't just music hit, it was a statement. For years, Drake has been called many things. The king of hits, the most streamed artist, the man who never leaves the spotlight. But with those titles come shadows. The whispers. That he's too mainstream, too calculated, or that younger rappers are hungrier. The idea that maybe, just maybe, his time at the top is running out. Those voices have been echoing louder in the industry lately, and if you listen closely to ICEMAN, you can hear him responding, not directly. Not by name, but through coded bars and subtle jabs. That's part of what makes the project so addictive. It's like a puzzle. On the surface, Drake raps about familiar themes: money, power, betrayal, relationships, but underneath, there's tension. When he talks about loyalty turning into silence or smiles that hide knives, you know he's not just rhyming. He's reliving something. He's addressing real people, real moments, real scars. The fans caught on quickly. Social media exploded with theories. Was he taking shots at old collaborators? Was he talking about rivals who doubted him? Or was this project less about others and more about himself? Drake, man versus myth. The beauty of it is that he never clarifies. He leaves the ice cracked, daring listeners to decide for themselves what lies beneath. And that's where the wild energy comes in. Most artists release music and move on. But with ICEMAN, Drake created a conversation that refuses to end. People aren't just listening, they're debating. They're analyzing lyrics line by line, comparing interviews, connecting dots. It's less like an album and more like a coded diary dropped into the public, daring anyone to decode it. But beneath all the speculation, there's a darker truth running through the music. You can feel the paranoia. It's a sense that being at the top isn't just about glory, it's about survival. There are lines where Drake sounds less like a superstar and more like a soldier, bracing for the next attack, building walls of ice to shield himself from betrayal. That's the core of the project. Coldness as protection. And yet, it's not just defensive. There are moments where he's aggressive, almost confrontational. It's like he's looking the industry in the eye and saying, "You wanted me gone. You wanted me soft. Watch how I freeze the game instead." Those moments remind you why Drake has lasted so long. He doesn't just adapt, he reinvents. every criticism becomes fuel. Every rival becomes motivation. That's the genius of ICEMAN. It's not just reflective, it's strategic. Drake knows the world is listening. He knows every bar will be replayed, dissected, twisted into think pieces. And instead of running from that pressure, he leans into it. He turns the microscope into a weapon, using the attention to amplify his message. It's the kind of move only a veteran can pull off, controlling not just the music, but the entire conversation around it. The sound design plays into that too. Notice how the beats feel colder, sharper, almost minimalistic compared to his earlier projects. That's intentional. It's not about drowning listeners in noise. It's about giving space to the words. The silences between the bars speak as loudly as the lyrics themselves. Every pause feels heavy, like he's daring you to sit with what he just said. And when you do, the picture becomes clear. ICEMAN isn't Drake at his most polished. It's Drake at his most calculated. He's showing us what it looks like too. Build walls of ice around yourself to stay standing in an industry that wants nothing more than to watch you fall. That's why the project feels wild. It's not just the content hits, the context. The fact that he chose this moment after years of dominance and waves of criticism. To drop something so cold, so different, so unapologetically vulnerable and confident at the same time. It's a risk, and risks are what separate legends from trends. The question isn't whether people like ICEMAN. The question is whether they understand it. And as the debates continue, one thing is clear. Drake has once again forced the world to pay attention, to step onto the ice with him and to realize just how slippery the crown really is. The deeper you go into ICEMAN, the more you realize this isn't just an album, it's a diary dressed up as music. If part 1 set the stage and part 2 exposed the chessboard, part 3 takes us inside Drake's mind, where the real battles are happening. Hey, and make no mistake, these aren't battles with rappers or critics. These are battles with himself. One of the strongest undercurrents running through the project is betrayal. Drake has always been vocal about trust issues, but here it feels sharper, colder, and more final. He's not just hinting at people who switch sides, he's drawing the lines clearly. You can hear the frustration in bars that talk about smiles that come with knives or loyalty melting quicker than ice in summer. Those aren't random metaphors, they're coded messages about people he once considered close. People who enjoyed the glow of his success but weren't built for the cold of his reality. And that's what cuts the deepest. Imagine building an empire brick by brick, only to realize that some of the hands helping you lay the foundation were planning to tear it down. That's the paranoia of success. That's the shadow side of fame. And through ICEMAN, Drake isn't just telling us about it, he's making us feel it. The production choices reflect that mood perfectly. There are long stretches of beats that feel almost empty, like walking through a cold hallway at night. The silences between the drums aren't mistakes, they're deliberate. They give you space to hear the pain in his delivery, the weariness in his tone. It's a reminder that the loudest moments in music don't always come from noise. Sometimes they come from the quiet between words. Fans who really dug into the lyrics started pointing out patterns. Certain lines sound like they're aimed at rivals, but when you put them under the microscope, they read more like self-reflection. It's as if Drake isn't just calling out others, he's calling out his own flaws. His tendency to let people in too easily, his inability to trust even when he wants to, his need to control the narrative because letting go feels too dangerous. That duality is what makes this project hit so hard. On the surface, it's Drake saying, "I'm still the coldest. I'm still the one you can't touch." But underneath, it's him whispering, "I'm tired. I'm frozen. I don't know if I can thaw." For longtime fans, that honesty is both refreshing and unsettling. Some call this his most vulnerable work since Take Care. But it's different this time. Back then, the vulnerability was romantic love. Heartbreak, the struggle of balancing fame and relationships. Now, the vulnerability is existential. It's not about whether someone loves him. It's about whether he can love at all after being prayed so many times. And that's what makes ICEMAN feel less like an album and more like a warning. Drake is telling us, and maybe telling himself, that being at the top has turned him into something colder than he ever intended. The boy who once wore his heart on his sleeve has had to armor it in ice. And once you've frozen yourself for survival, how do you melt again? Can you even melt again? That's the haunting question that lingers after every listen. Of course, fans ran with this in all directions. Some saw it as a response to rivalries, others as a sign that Drake is entering his darkest artistic era yet. Social media was flooded with debates about whether he was dropping hints about friendships gone sour, or about industry figures who crossed him behind the scenes. But the truth is, the wildest theory might be the simplest one. Maybe this project isn't about anyone else. Maybe it's about him, and that's why it hits so hard. Because at the end of the day, what do you do when the biggest threat to your empire isn't the critics, the rivals, or the industry, but yourself? By the time listeners reached the middle of ICEMAN, it became clear this wasn't just Drake making another project. This was him stepping into a new persona. For years, fans have seen different sides of him. The lover boy, the ruthless competitor, the pop superstar, the reflective poet. But here, he's something else entirely. He's the ICEMAN. The name isn't just a title, it's a mask, a transformation. The ICEMAN is Drake stripped of warmth, stripped of hesitation, stripped of the vulnerability that once made him relatable. This isn't the man sending late-night texts or confessing about heartbreak. This is the man who's built walls so high no one can climb them. It's Drake saying, if being cold is what it takes to survive, then I'll become the coldest. Culturally, this shook people. Some fans celebrated it immediately, calling it his boldest move in years. They argued that hip-hop had become predictable, everyone chasing trends, everyone trying to sound alike. And here comes Drake, the biggest artist in the game, dropping something stripped down, icy, and brutally honest. It felt like a reset button, a reminder that he doesn't have to chase anyone's sound, he can create his own atmosphere and make the world adapt. Others, though, were thrown off. They missed the warmth, the sing-along hooks, the softer side of Drake that made him a crossover megastar. To them, ICEMAN felt too heavy, too cold, too distant. But that divide was part of the genius. By polarizing listeners, Drake ensured that the conversation never stopped. Whether people loved it or hated it, they couldn't ignore it. And in today's culture, being unforgettable is worth more than being universally liked. The ICEMAN persona also carries a larger message about survival in the entertainment industry. At this level, success doesn't come from talent alone. It comes from strategy, from knowing how to reinvent yourself, from understanding when to open up and when to shut down. The ICEMAN is Drake's way of protecting himself, not just from rivals, but from the expectations of fans, from the pressures of fame, and from the emotional toll of being everyone's target for over a decade. It's a move that echoes some of hip-hop's greatest transformations. Think of Jay-Z shifting into Hov during the Blueprint era, or Kanye West becoming Yeezus when he needed to reinvent his sound. Every legendary artist reaches a point where they have to create an alter ego to survive the weight of their own name. For Drake, ICEMAN is that reinvention. And the wildest part, he doesn't just wear the mask, he embodies it through the music. The flows are sharper, the delivery colder, the beats minimal but intentional. There's no warmth to hide behind, no radio-friendly polish to soften the edges. It's Drake standing in the snowstorm with nothing but his words. And that makes every line hit harder. But beyond the music itself, the cultural ripples were undeniable. Suddenly, conversations shifted from, "Is Drake still relevant?" to, "What does this mean for hip-hop?" Artists and critics alike started to acknowledge that this wasn't Drake chasing trends, it was him setting one. The icy, stripped-back production began influencing younger rappers who wanted to capture that same raw energy. In an industry obsessed with hype, ICEMAN proved that mood, tone, and honesty could still dominate. That's what makes this project so wild. It's not just about Drake venting. It's about Drake redefining the rules of engagement. He doesn't need to prove he can make hits. He doesn't need to fight for radio play. He's beyond that now. ICEMAN is him testing the culture, asking, "Can you handle me at my coldest? Can you still follow me when I strip away the shine and leave only the frost?" Heh. And whether people answered yes or no, they were still talking about it. That's the mark of impact. That's the mark of someone who doesn't just exist in the culture, but bends it to his will. So when people call this project crazy, it's not just because of the content. It's because of what it represents. A superstar at his peak, willingly stepping away from the warmth of comfort and stepping into the cold of reinvention. That's not just music hits survival. That's not just an album, it's a cultural moment. As ICEMAN closes, one thing becomes impossible to ignore. This isn't just another project in Drake's catalog. This is a statement, a time capsule, and perhaps even a warning. For years, Drake has been the most consistent name in hip-hop chart-topping. Hits meme-worthy moments, and a presence so dominating that people began to wonder if he'd ever truly face decline. But ICEMAN changes that conversation. Here, we don't see the polished superstar, the romantic hero, or even the ruthless competitor. We see something colder, an artist who has lived long enough in the spotlight to understand the cost of survival. Fame isn't free. Success doesn't come without sacrifice. And trust. In Drake's world, trust is a currency rarer than gold. The more you peel back the layers of ICEMAN, the more you realize it's not just music hits, strategy. Every line carries weight. Every pause feels deliberate. Every beat is stripped down to leave space for the words that matter most. It's Drake revealing the truth without ever needing to say it directly. That's the genius of the ICEMAN persona. He tells you everything while keeping you guessing. Think about the timing too. Kuch could have easily played it safe-dropped. Another collection of radio anthems leaned on the formula that has carried him for over a decade. But instead, he chose the cold path. He chose to alienate some fans, to spark debates, to challenge expectations. That takes courage. That takes vision. It's proof that he's not just coasting, he's evolving. And this is what separates icons from legends. Many artists dominate for a moment, maybe even for a few years. But only a few know how to reinvent themselves, how to adapt, how to stay unpredictable. Jay-Z did it, Kanye did it. And now Drake, through ICEMAN, has done it too. The wildest part. This project doesn't feel like an ending. It feels like a transition. A doorway into whatever comes next. The ICEMAN persona might just be the beginning of Drake's next era, colder, sharper, more strategic version of the artist we thought we already knew. And if this is just the start, then the culture better prepare itself. Because when Drake chooses to reinvent, he doesn't just participate in hip-hop, he reshapes it in the bigger picture. ICEMAN also serves as a reflection of the world around him. We live in colder times where connections feel fragile, where success often comes with isolation, where trust is hard to find. Drake isn't just rapping about himself, here he's holding up a mirror. And maybe that's why the project resonates so deeply, even with those who didn't expect to like it. It's not just his story, it's our story too. The story of surviving in a world that doesn't always care about feelings, where being cold sometimes feels like the only way to stay alive. So when people say ICEMAN is wild, they're right. But it's not just because of the music. It's because it forces us to rethink Drake, rethink hip-hop, and rethink what survival in the spotlight really looks like. This isn't just about bars or beats. It's about transformation, resilience, and the power of reinvention. And that's the beauty of it. Whether you love it or hate it, you can't walk away from ICEMAN unchanged. It lingers. It stays with you. It makes you question not just Drake's journey, but your own. That's what makes this project legendary. And with that, we've broken down one of the coldest, boldest, and most unexpected projects of Drake's career. If you made it this far, you're not just a casual listener, you're part of the deeper conversation. And I respect that. This was Mighty X bringing you the breakdown, the story, and the truth behind the music. Stay locked in, because this is just the beginning of what's coming next. Thanks for rocking with me. Thanks for watching. And remember, when the world gets cold, only the real ones survive.